her help from the health department to come talk to us about the Eastern equine encephalitis issue that we have.
He said we made this last week.
Brock Company.
Yay!
Morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Colette Scrimger, the health officer for Barry Eaton District Health Department. I have Jay Van Stee with me. He's our interim environmental health director, and Miley Bergstaller, who is one of our community health promotion specialists. They're going to help me in this conversation to answer some of the questions that I don't necessarily can't respond to immediately. So I'll give a little bit of a summary, and then we'll just open it up to questions from you, and we'll do our best to answer everything. About a week and a half ago, this fall and late summer, we've certainly been seeing an increase in EEE, Eastern equine encephalitis, within the southwest portion of the state primarily. And we're especially impacted in Barry County and Kalamazoo County and Calhoun is where we were initially seeing the highest activity. About a week and a half ago, the state reached out to us out of concern at the increasing numbers of mortality and morbidity with this disease within the greater region. And a combination of that and the weather patterns and just the presence of mosquitoes in the area and the concern of risk to human health, they proposed a plan to try to mitigate that going forward, since it was anticipated that a hard frost wouldn't be coming for quite some time. In Barry County at this point, we have seen one human case of EEE, and then we've seen 5 confirmed cases in animals. With our most recent case we were notified of the most recent case last week in an animal. There's been 9 human cases of EEE within the region, the greater southwest region of the state. 9 human cases and 3 fatalities of those 9. So a pretty high mortality rate for those who are diagnosed with full EEE. And then there's been 33 animals in the 15 counties that have been impacted by this that have been diagnosed with EEE. We continue to see active mosquito presence in the area, and as recent as yesterday, mosquito surveillance that is happening in at least one part of Barry County is showing the presence of the type of mosquitoes that carry this disease. And so we know that the mosquitoes are still here, and that they are active. And so I know that you hear different people talking about, well, I haven't seen very many mosquitoes, or, some people say they've seen a lot, some people say they haven't seen any. There's a lot of differences, but we know that as recently as yesterday, the state was reporting to us in a mosquito surveillance area of Barry County that there is active mosquitoes of the type of mosquitoes that carry this disease. So,
if I could, Madam Chair, interrupt. Can we just go back a little bit? Can you explain for us what is EEE, why it's so dangerous, and why we're doing so much to prevent it?
Yep.
What are the symptoms?
Yep. So the reason that EEE is such a concern, or in this situation, we see EEE every year. Pretty much every year we see some level of activity, typically in animals, within the area. And we've known that EEE is present in certain areas of Barry County where the mosquitoes that are known to carry the disease are present. And so it's relatively normal for us to see it. What is unusual is for us to see it transfer over to the human population. It's not as common for us to see that happen. And the rate that this has been happening this year is much higher. In a typical year across the entire United States, you see about 7 to 8 EEE cases in humans across the entire United States. And this year alone in Michigan, we've seen 9. So that just tells you right there that there's something different going on What's causing that, we don't know. It's a combination of factors. Is it all the rain that we've had, this year? Is it climate change? Is it, we don't really know. We don't do enough research in this area to understand what's really happening. So that's sort of the history on it. In terms of the disease itself and why it is such a threat is just because of the level of illness it brings forward to individuals. So let me just explain that you could get bit by a mosquito infected with triple E, and you might carry that disease, but you won't even know that you had it. Other individuals might get bit and they might have a low level of illness, some mild flu-like symptoms, and won't really even think much of it. But other people develop a much more serious illness, from the triple E virus and get debilitated, very ill. It affects the brain and can cause inflammation and all sorts of problems. And right now there's about a 33-34% fatality rate associated with those who develop that full onset encephalitis. And for those who do recover, they likely are going to have pretty long-lasting effects because of that illness. They may not recover fully. They may continue to have, some sort of brain problems or developmental problems or anything like that. It tends to affect the older population and the younger population the most. So we see it in over 50 and then under 15. And so in this situation that's going on currently, we know that there was at least one child who became ill with triple E and is seriously ill as a result. That was in Kalamazoo County. The others were all adults that have become ill at this point.
So does it have worse effects for like immunodeficient people than say healthy? I mean, or can it just go from 0 to 60 on anybody?
It can, again, it tends to target that under 15 and that over 50 population range is where you see it most often. As I understand it, yes, you probably could be more likely if you have other health issues, but it's also not necessarily selective in that way.
So is it like West Nile, the mosquito bites a horse that has it, and then that's how they get it and pass it on to a human?
I'll let Jay explain the transmission process.
If you could pull the microphone.
Yeah. So there's two species of mosquito, and one of them is the endemic variety that it basically is a bird biter, and it just circulates this triple E among the bird populations in these swamps. There's actually 3 endemic swamps in Berry County that have been referenced: the Pitchman Lake, Long Lake, and Blockman Swamp areas around Delton, where they just know every year these particular birds and this particular species of mosquito just circulates it. So it's pretty much there all the time, but those mosquitoes don't bite humans. They're just bird biters. The concern is when they overlap with this other species of mosquito, which is called the cattail mosquito, that is more omnivorous, and it will bite both birds and other species, mammals. And that is the mosquito that is transmitting it. Humans, horses, deer are considered dead-end hosts, however, in that they can't be transmitted from, a mosquito can't bite me, I get the disease, or if I have the disease and transmit it from me to another person. The mosquito can only actually contract the disease, if you will, from a bird, but then it would have to bite a human or a mammal from the bird. So it's complicated, to say the least. I don't know if I can see the quizzical look.
Well,
it's a little confusing.
You'd think they would get it from a horse.
Yeah,
Not
they
a bird.
don't. The horse is considered a dead-end host. The mosquito would bite the bird and then transmit it to the horse, or the human, or the deer. It can't be transmitted further from that. It'd have to come back from a bird.
Now, is it transferable people to people
No.
if we breathe on you?
Not at
I
all.
mean, not like some of the meningitises
No.
that you can, okay.
So we're taking the unprecedented step of spraying, which is suggested by state health officials.
Correct. So about a week and a half ago, the state, after sort of, monitoring the situation, understanding where the state is at on a, multi-jurisdictional level, determined that, we've been pushing the education out about, using insect repellent, wearing long sleeves and long pants, avoiding being out, during the prime mosquito time frame, taking those kinds of precautions, but we were still seeing the progression of the disease. And so another tool in the toolbox is to do mosquito spraying. And so the state opened up conversations with the jurisdictions that were affected by this to discuss that option of doing aerial spraying for mosquitoes on a multi-county level in the areas that were most affected by the spread of the disease. And so the most affected were taking target areas where cases were identified within each county and creating a zone around that and using that information plus other information we provided, as an example, the information about the swamps that are known to carry this mosquito, use that information to map out spraying zones. And so, and the state offered to do this aerial spraying in these counties as another way to mitigate the spread of disease, to reduce the level of risk to individuals living in those areas by eliminating the mosquito population. And they were looking at weather as well as an issue, that we are still, we have not had a hard frost that would be likely to kill off the mosquito population, and that it looks like that frost won't come for a few weeks still. What I am hearing is the end of October. And there's still a lot of time between now and then for people to be out and about in this area, and we continue to see, because, they sort of use the animal cases as an indicator of where the disease is at. So what we're seeing now is the spread of animal cases further east and north, I would say, into these other counties that haven't normally seen this kind of activity. So we know that the disease is there and that it continues to spread. And so doing this aerial spraying is just one option that we have as a community to try to reduce the risk to human health, is really what we're looking at. So the state put together a plan of what, how this aerial spraying would happen, what areas it would be done in, and working closely with us at the local health department level to make sure that we were covering the things that needed to happen within our community. And they were relying on us to do the notification out to our communities to make people aware of the spraying happening. On Friday, the state issued a declaration declaring a public health emergency because of the Tripoli situation, and indicating that they will be going out to these 15 counties and initiating a process of spraying. The original intent was that the spraying would start on Sunday night, so this past Sunday, and then would continue until they hit all of the areas. Of course, aerial spraying is using planes to spray the target areas, and it's very weather dependent. And so Sunday night's weather was not cooperative, and so they were not able to do any spraying on Sunday night. It is my understanding at this point in time that they did spray last night. The weather was looking favorable for that. As of when I left the office, I had not seen verification that the spraying actually took place in the areas that they were planning. Berry County was not one of the target areas for last night's spraying event. And I have not received word yet as to when Berry County will be a target area. The state is going to release that information daily of what areas they plan to spray in, and then notify us so that we can continue to make sure our community is aware of that.
I've had some phone calls So you don't know yet which townships will be sprayed?
We do know the area, so I gave you each a copy of the map that has the spray zone. So that's the general spray zone, I think it's like a bluish or purplish spray or coloring of the county. Jay, which townships is it generally speaking?
Johnstown, Berry,
Baltimore.
and, yeah, a little bit of Prairieville, maybe, yeah, right
Baltimore.
down there,
Baltimore, yeah.
South Central.
So it's only within those areas, and from what we understand, it's pretty targeted, that they're using night vision and radar, precise radar and, all this high-tech stuff to make sure that they're hitting the areas. They're excluding open bodies of water, so they're not spraying over open bodies of water. So that, I know that has been a concern for some people as well. They're using an organic insecticide in very low dosage. So the type of dosage that you're talking about is an ounce sprayed across an entire football field. So it's very small amounts. The product that they're using is made from chrysanthemums, and it's used very commonly in other states and other areas that do spraying very regularly. So they're spraying in the evening hours, so for between dusk and dawn, in order to reduce the risk to other species or other insects and birds and that kind of thing that won't be out and about. I know a lot of talk right now is about the impact on honeybees or birds or that kind of thing. And the spraying at night is intentional so that you aren't having an impact on butterflies and bees and those sorts of species. What they have told us is that once the chemical hits ground or, the trees or the plants, it breaks down very quickly so that there's no real residual left over for animals who are eating the plants or other kinds of things like that. So it's a very low risk insecticide that's used pretty commonly. And what we're really weighing here is the risk of that impact versus the risk of somebody getting this disease, and that that has such a high fatality rate or such lasting health effects for that individual.
I have one last question. Everybody in this room has a friend, a neighbor, or a loved one that's working outside right now. What do people need to know if they're going outside in Berry County?
So if they're working outside on a regular basis, especially between those hours of dusk to dawn, they should be protecting themselves against the mosquito's bite. So taking all precautions that they can to wear long sleeves, long pants, use insect repellent that contains DEET, and to the extent that they can, to avoid being out during those hours. So many of our schools have taken precautions of rescheduling football games and other evening activities to earlier in the day to reduce the risk of exposure. Some of the schools have taken precautions of spraying themselves in their properties so that they again can reduce it. The other kinds of things that you can do are things like going around your own property and dumping standing water, making sure you don't have pools of standing water around, making sure your screens don't have any holes in it so you're not getting mosquitoes into your house. Those are the other kinds of precautions that we encourage people to take.
In this brochure, in the key, there's nothing to tell us what the counties that are crosshatch means. Like Kent County is crosshatched in the black and white.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
I don't see anything in the key to indicate what that means.
Is it maybe that bottom one didn't get hatched?
I don't know.
They must have missed that one. What is that?
Yeah, or the-
Kent or out of-
There's some crosshatch, those same no. There's also some crosshatched in the
Interesting.
next one too, in the animal cases.
I am not sure, but I can find out. The state produced, this is right off of the state's website, the michigan.gov/EEE. So if you go to that website, you'll see it right there. It might be one of those that if you pull it up on the website, it might be clearer. It might have been just a problem with the printer.
I'm sure it's one, because each of the maps has two just white ones. I'm sure one of those was supposed to be
Yeah.
crosshatched.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's not much of a map if you can't.
Yeah.
if you can't
If you don't-
read the
if there's
key.
nothing in the key.
yep.
No.
But I will
this
see if
is-
I can find out and send a message to Michael that he can share with all of you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Bob, 3 minutes.
Does triple E have the same devastating effect on animals as other people, or do animals have some sort of immunity or some way to fight this off?
I'll answer just, I know that there's animal deaths. So we get reports of horses and deer, some of the wolf pups, I don't know if you heard, in Calhoun County at the Binder Park Zoo were affected by that, but typically it affects horses and deer is the most common. Do you have
I
more
mean,
to
I would
add
say
to
that,
that?
obviously equine encephalitis is known as a horse disease, and it is nearly always fatal in horses. I have anecdotally been told that there could be, there likely are, other horse cases in Berry County, in the Amish community, had been alleged that there's been a horse die-off that maybe has gone unreported as, and I did communicate that to the state, so it could be a little wider than we even know. But, yeah, largely, it's nearly fatal almost all the time in horses. Deer, I'm not entirely certain, I can't speak to that. I think they're less common, but we're seeing more and more cases of deer this year, for sure.
It's important to know too, there is a vaccine for horses, so horses can
Yes.
be vaccinated against this. There is no vaccine. And horses will need to be vaccinated every year because it is a short window of protection with that vaccine. It is not a required vaccine for horses though.
Actually, it's a human vaccine, but it's not, it's only military use, from what I
Sure.
understand. It's not
Sure.
approved.
Not
So,
available
but they
to
do
the
use it
public.
in the military, but interesting. So maybe in the future that will be an option.
It's not approved.
Any other? Yeah, how many vaccines did you get when you went through that?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Miley was able to clarify that the bottom box, so the one that
Okay.
says county with WNV asymptomatic,
Okay, that
Is,
one. All right,
um,
that's the crosshatch?
that's the crosshatch.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Clark Aquatic, or Clark Company that's doing this, I mean, they're global. I mean, they handle mosquito issues all over the world. So, I mean, they're good at what they do.
From my experience, I lived and worked in Bay, Midland, and Saginaw counties for close to 20 years, and they have a millage, and they routinely spray their community for mosquitoes. And so you hear that they do trucks, and so it's a little pickup truck with a tank sprayer on the back, and it's a fumer, actually, and has a little smell like a tomato plant. And after 15, 20 minutes, the smell is gone, and so is the truck, and your communities have been sprayed, and you don't notice it till the next time they come around. You can see on the map that those communities have birds and mosquitoes identified as carrying the disease, and they routinely spray. I have been an asthmatic for years. The sprays never caused any problems with my breathing. I never had any type of rashes, and a lot of times I would be outside when they'd be spraying because that's the shift I worked or whatever. I've never had a problem with it. The other thing is the chemical that they're planning to use can be bought right down here at Tractor Supply in various sizes and a little bit stronger strength for use at home. And there's specific instructions on where to use it. It has been safe for dairy facilities, so a lot of dairy farms have an automatic dispenser in the parlor or in the milk house to eradicate flies and mosquitoes to keep those animals and people safe. So it's not that this specific chemical is new to us. It's very available. If they've got it at Tractor Supply, it's usually pretty well documented what it's for. And then, the chrysanthemums, those are marigolds, and how many people plant marigolds in their gardens to keep mosquitoes away. So this isn't a foreign substance. We use it. We just didn't know what it was called, I think. Commissioners, did you have any more questions for the health department?
Just that this is state initiated. The state is also picking up all the cost on this. This wasn't something that local public health departments had a say in as far as whether you wanted to spray, not spray. Was there opportunity for input, or is this something that statewide they've determined where the areas were that they wanted to target and pretty much informed you that's what they were doing?
Nope, so the state is absorbing all the costs of doing the spraying. And the state has declared the public health emergency situation and have made the strong recommendation to local health departments that in the affected counties that you participate in this. So I had the ability to make the decision of whether we will be a part of the spraying or not. And based on that very strong recommendation from the state that we do that, and in consultation with our, neighboring health departments, et cetera, and the staff and the board, the decision was made that we would have Berry County participate. Eaton County would be the same if they were one of the affected areas.
Actually, Commissioner Connor had a question first.
So what about this turmoil in Kalamazoo County that they're not going to spray?
Yeah, so by state law, my very simple understanding of things, when it comes to this kind of aerial spraying, by state law, the state does have to allow individuals to opt out of being sprayed. So if you as a property owner do not want your property sprayed, they have to provide for an opt-out provision so that your property will not get sprayed. So what happened in Kalamazoo is that they had so many property owners opt out of the spraying that, as I understand it, basically once the state mapped all those opt-outs across the county, it became ineffective to do the spraying. And so Kalamazoo pulled out of doing the spraying because there were so many opt-outs that it was not an effective intervention anymore for that county.
That's scary, hearing how safe and studied this chemical is, that people decide to opt out of it.
Commissioner Snelker?
Yes, I want to thank you for keeping us updated very well, I feel, on the website. And with the opt-out, how do we handle that? Does that go through zoning? How do you do that if someone calls you?
So if you want to opt out, you have to go through the state website. You send an email to EEE@michigan.gov with your property address and your name and contact information. The state is collecting all of those, putting them into a spreadsheet, and then they are sending that spreadsheet out to local health departments every day. And then we are working actually with Dave Shinevere here in Berry County, who is taking those addresses then and he is mapping those. And then he is sending a file back to the state with those property boundaries mapped for the state to plug into the system that they will be using to create the flight plan, I guess you would say, for the spraying area. So as long as your opt-out request gets in before Berry County gets sprayed, which at this point we don't know which day it will be, then your opt-out information would be included. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that this is a situation where if you opt out for your address, you are also opting out part of your neighbors as well, because the state has to put a 1,000-foot,
It's a 500-foot buffer.
a 500-foot buffer around your property to assure that your property doesn't get sprayed. So that means that you're impacting your neighbors as well. And it's reducing the impact that we can have in the community for protecting public health. So the map that you have is the full spray zone. It does not address any opt-outs in there. So that's just the area that is intended to be sprayed. And then working with Dave Shinevere, there will be another map created that has the opt-out addresses embedded in that the state will use to direct their flight plan.
The only ones that should call then is someone that is in this
Correct, but people from honestly all over the county and people all over the state have been submitting addresses, and because there's so much confusion and just people aren't really understanding what's going on.
Yeah, on that, do they have to give a reason why they're opting out?
No.
Because with the information that you just presented to us, I feel like if they had it in front of them, they might see that they're making an unwise choice.
Yeah, and we're trying to do the best we can. A lot of this is circulating through social media, and so we've tried. I know on I think it was the Berry County 911 page, there was a lot of conversation going on over the weekend that some of my staff tried to correct, some misperceptions that were out there. On our Facebook page, we've been doing the same. So we've been trying to make those corrections as we can, but, I think the information is circulating faster through other channels that we're having a hard time being able to manage that. So I do think that there is a lot of misinformation out there. The most that I have seen when I've looked on social media is a lot of misinformation about the impact on bees and butterflies. And, you try to educate that spraying at night will reduce that. And then just people also being concerned about the impact on their own health, that is a greater risk than getting bit by a mosquito infected with triple E. And so those are just, everyone has the right to make their personal choices. In this situation, we're just concerned that those personal choices are affecting others because mosquitoes fly.
They don't know, when Kalamazoo doesn't spray, they don't know where the border is for Berry County. So it's.
They're putting us all at risk.
Right, by the opting out. I'm sorry, John.
It's okay.
You're fine. Jay, how big a area does it, if someone opts out, how big an area, say, does a mosquito cover?
Well, so it's interesting, these particular mosquitoes that, the cattail mosquito that is actually the bridge vector that we're most concerned with actually are pretty good flyers. That's that's one reason why I think that they're such a concern. Most mosquitoes, generally speaking, people will, have heard this, that they don't fly very far from, they're generally speaking within 100 yards or so from where they emerge. But this cattail mosquito could potentially fly a couple of miles. Actually, I've heard 2.5 miles. And I think hence that was how they developed the original radius around the cases of known cases. They basically went 2.5 miles and said, this is the area that we're most concerned with. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
It certainly does. That's how they come up with the area they did. Thank you.
Yep.
I have lots of bats. They keep my mosquitoes in check.
Spray for them.
No, not
And
necessarily.
you're home.
I just
Then we
don't
get
like them
worried.
in my house.
There you go.
So
Thank you.
if a bat eats a mosquito with triple E, does the bat get the triple E? Good. More bats.
You say no?
And bats can eat their body weight in mosquitoes. How often? Every night, something like that. Crazy. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need a break or can we get Jim Yarger in here? Let's take a 5.
Yes, thank you.
I got to vote. Yeah, I think we needed one.
Thank you.
Take 5.